have with me Dr. Kersi Chavda, who needs no introduction, but for those joining in, he's been the past president of the Bombay Psychiatric Society and a current consultant with PD Hinduja National, Hinduja Healthcare, and Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospitals. He's been on multiple panels and played a vital role in repealing Section 377. Dr. Chavda has been in the industry for the past 35 years with a keen interest in kids psychiatry. And he is here with us today to talk about himself and his experience of 35 years as we go on the journey of Covenant Art together. So it's so amazing that you've taken out this time to do this Covenant Art interview with me. I'll be basically creating something, an art piece, which is a suggestive art form based on your life experiences, those little big moments that really define and make you who you are, and sort of talk about your psyche, how you get to doing what you do so well. So maybe you can just share a little bit about your journey, just like an introduction.
Sure.
And
So basically, I always wanted to become a doctor. It was just there, I just wanted to get into medicine. So many years ago, we managed to get into medicine. At that time it was comparatively easier in comparison to what we are seeing today. But even at that time, it was very difficult. So we got into medicine, and then I was doing my graduation, and in the process of doing my graduation, I found that very often when my friends had problems, they'd just come and chat with me about them, and I would kind of suggest what could be done, what shouldn't be done, and it seemed to work.
yeah,
So I was not doing any really, scientifically oriented thing, but
right.
I just enjoyed what I
Just
was
very
doing.
organically
Very-
growing in
yeah. And
that
it seemed to
field.
work, it seemed to help, etc., etc. During my postgrad, I could have taken up either pediatrics or psychiatry, and I was always interested in children as well. I like kids.
Yeah.
I like growing up with kids. Kids seem to like me as well. So I decided then to take up psychiatry, and then my field of interest became kids. So I've done a lot of work with children.
Right.
So I've got the best of both the worlds. So that's how
Amazing.
it started. It is, I think, great fun to work with children. It's also great fun to work in psychiatry, though it can be extremely traumatizing at times given the kind of work we are doing, where there is abuse of various kinds, and you see a lot of stuff which sometimes shakes your faith in humanity. But then there's also a lot of rewards that we see, and when we see the improvement and we see the positivity, then it kind of makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, like when you see someone grow out of their troubles,
yeah.
it's so very rewarding, I'm very sure. And it sounds like your journey's been very organic. It started off in college. So I think it's going to be a fun session to get to know more.
Okay.
Yeah. Any important relationship that's, helped mold you and,
Okay, so I'm one of two brothers,
okay.
and I was born 10 years after my elder brother, so I kept teasing my parents that I was actually a mistake, and they get very embarrassed about it. My mom was a principal in a school,
Okay.
one of the nicest people I think I have ever met. She was extremely understanding and extremely educated for her time. She had done her MABT, which at that time was very, shall we say, rare for ladies. Excellent educationist. She was really loved by her kids.
Okay.
And I grew up seeing what good positive reinforcement could do to kids who were not doing so well.
Okay.
Dad was the quiet, silent type. They adored each other. If Daddy had lived another 8 or 10 months, they would have been married 60 years, which is a huge thing.
Right, yeah.
So he died
yeah.
about 4 months before their 60th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And given what we see always, Mummy expired about 7 or 8 months after that because she couldn't live without him, I think.
Right, of course.
She was very important in my life. After that, Dad was, of course. My wife is, of course, extremely important also. She is extremely strong, so I think we complement each other. And calm. She's a little bit not so calm. I'm extremely laid out and easygoing, and she pushes and gets me to do what I would not have done otherwise, just because I'm too laid back or too lethargic. And she feels that if you have what you have, then get out there and do it. So we complement each other, and it's been a fairly good journey together. Of course, everybody has their ups and downs. I mean, it would be stupid for us to think that we keep blowing kisses at each other. But we've had great times together, and I think the sense of trust and utmost, feeling that there is somebody there who will be there for you, especially in your down moments, who's
Right.
just there all the time and willing to put their neck out if there is a necessity, is something that can just not be emulated otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think these two ladies are extremely important in my life. I've also been blessed to have a huge number of friends.
Okay.
So there are friends who I have grown up with who are still friends.
Yeah.
There are so-called newer friends who I have landed up being very privileged to have as friends, and there are a huge number of psychiatrists and other medico friends who have just been there and supported me at times when it was necessary, and been there and had a great time with me when there was really no problem. So I am extremely blessed to have a huge friend circle, because growing up and feeling that there is nobody in your life who you can talk to or be friends with or go out with is a horrible state of affairs, I believe.
That really does stop your progress.
That does.
If you don't have a good, a circle around you,
Yeah.
a close-knit support system.
So when you're down and you just call them up and say, they kind of say what's wrong, something's wrong, and then they come down and maybe you have a drink or you just go out and you have fun and you talk a lot of nonsense and you get back and you're rejuvenated and things become okay again.
Right.
That kind of thing is priceless.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky to have that happen.
So you've had
often.
that constant.
Constant. I'm really, there've been ups and downs, of course, even with friends.
Yeah.
But by and large, I've had friends who've been together 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, and I'm very blessed. I'm really blessed in that.
Okay. So you said you're laid back. I feel like a lot of intelligent people tend to be laid back, and then you have your wife who pushes you, which takes a different kind of acumen. So maybe you can talk about that dynamic.
Okay, so even when you're saying laid back, it is like, I wouldn't push myself too much. To give you a very simple example, if I'm paying off a loan and the loan says 2 years, I won't push myself. My wife will probably push and say, pay it off faster, finish it in 1 year.
Right.
That kind of thing. So it's an extremely positive thing.
Right.
But it's something that maybe I would not have pushed myself so much to do. And she says, why the hell don't we? Then if you finish off with the loan, we can enjoy the rest of our life. That kind of thing. So it is something that maybe I wouldn't have taken so seriously unless it was told to me, so she pushes. Today in my medical career, I think I push quite a bit. I'm fairly busy. I do a huge number of webinars and things like that. I'm fairly well known in the medical field also.
Yeah.
In my field. So over there, I don't think I'm as laid back as I am in my other non-professional part.
Right.
So maybe there I'm a little bit of a workaholic.
Okay.
I'm trying to cut down. It becomes difficult. I'm trying to follow the advice I give others about not
Having a balance.
about having a balance. It's difficult, but we try.
Right. I think what you're saying is, you really love what you're doing. It gives you a sense of satisfaction. There's a lot of takeaways from what you do. So maybe you can talk about that, like your main core passion.
I can also understand why people say that you should retire at 60.
Okay.
Because every 5 years you see yourself slowing down, you see yourself getting upset at what is happening. Maybe your patience becomes a little less at times because you start feeling that, why don't they do what they're told to do, because we know that it will make a difference.
Right.
Of course, they have to go through their own journey. In the normal course of events, if you're 60, then you kind of retire and you don't work as much. For us in our field, that's actually the time when people come up to you more because you've got so much of experience and so much of expertise. So till you're 70 at least, I don't think there's a problem, which we're very privileged with that because we can really keep working for a much longer time period. And given the fact that we know that cognitive slowing down occurs when you kind of suddenly stop what you're doing, and if you don't have too many other things which would take the place of what you were doing, then that you tend to slow down mentally. I think we're very lucky that we don't have to do that for at least a few more years. So that's one part. You know, there are lots of negatives associated with our profession now, given the fact that there's so much of legality associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
So people only look at what is negative in the medical profession. They don't really look at the positives that are happening, and everybody's up there in the media talking about this doctor asked for this test and this doctor is taking a cut from here and all of that. They don't realize that there are doctors, that not every doctor does it. They don't also realize that there is so much of positivity happening, that we are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that very often there are colleagues who can never attend a family function because they're called out for, things like that.
Yeah.
Very often you don't remember the last time you had a full night's sleep because there's an interruption. Even if a person calls you at 2 in the morning and says, are you going to be available tomorrow? You can't say no. You can't really abuse the fellow like you'd want to, because, we are just supposed to be there. And then you have people coming in and then talking of legalities and talking the usual, do you know who I am? And then you have a whole bunch of violence which is now occurring against doctors, which is a sad, sad state of affairs.
Yeah.
Things are changing to some extent. It's not as much as it should. The COVID pandemic has been tremendously traumatic to a whole bunch of doctors. We've had a huge number of doctors losing their lives.
Yeah.
We are in the front, especially our youngsters, and to have, say, a 22-year-old who's not really wet his teeth, such as it were, be in the front line and face up to so many deaths which are occurring because of lack of facilities, or because the person is so unwell and cannot cope with the pandemic, is a nightmare that you would not wish on your worst enemy. And we are seeing it happening with our children. So our kids are going to grow up, our medical kids are going to grow up much faster than, and age much faster than otherwise they would have. So that's not the best thing in the world. If you're looking at what really affects me, one of the things that really affects me is child abuse.
Okay.
I find it very difficult to cope with that. I mean, all this, the detachment that we are supposed to face, that's the only thing that allows us to happen, because otherwise clinically we'll crack up. If I go home and I take the 25 or 30 or 40 or 50 cases that I've dealt with home, and I'll never be able to survive. So we have to cut ourselves off from it.
Right.
But when you get a patient who's been sexually traumatized by somebody in the family, or has been raped or murdered, or you have a mother who's lost 2 kids to cancer, or stuff like that, it's very difficult to remain sane at such times. So you kind of go home, and then you have to go back into a so-called normal environment, and you thank the good Lord every day that you have that normal environment to go back to.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a payoff.
It's a payoff.
So you spoke about these difficult clients who come to you and say, you don't know who I am, but then at the end of the day, they, you see that they actually need you the most.
No, it's more irritant value than anything.
Okay.
People throwing their weight around occasionally. I don't get too much of that, because I don't think people, in a very funny way, they don't do it with me.
Okay.
But sometimes there is this, why are you not available when I want you to be available? And, guys, I also have a life. So that becomes a little traumatic, a little difficult at times.
Which is important to draw that line, so they know that their life is
now, when you're younger, when you're growing up in the field, maybe you can't draw that line that much.
Yeah.
As you grow older, you can. So now I don't get affected by it so much. I don't get faced by it so much.
Yeah.
When I was young, and you really want to establish yourself, and you want to be known, you want to be there where the action is, then your way of dealing with the situation is very different.
Right.
Today it's very different.
Okay, so you can maybe talk about how you deal with these hurdles, like things that push you into a shell or a corner when you talk about child abuse, or these.
So the things that really make a difference when I'm down.
The detachment aspect as well.
It's difficult to be detached, and frankly I don't want to be too detached, because I don't want to be a piece of wood or a piece of stone.
Yeah, that's also there.
But what we normally do is, I go home and I'm, shall I say, very quiet. So the good wife now knows that there's a problem. So she says, bad patient, and I say yes. She leaves me alone, she makes me do stuff, otherwise very quietly do our own thing. I have this bunch of friends. Sometimes they come down if they know that there's a problem. I just call them up and say, "Can we meet? I'm a little down," and they come down. Or I mean, we meet up, talk a lot of nonsense, laugh a bit, and then you survive.
Yeah.
That's how it happens. I also used to work out a lot. Today the gyms are closed and I don't want to get into the gym. I'm mildly asthmatic and we are not absolutely certain about sanitation. But for the past 35 years I used to go to the gym regularly 5 times a week, and that used to help a lot. Because when you're down and out and upset and angry and frustrated, you lift weights giving galis mentally at the guy who's perpetrated whatever has been done. By the time you finish your session, you feel a little calmer.
You feel better. So, okay, so you spoke about things that disturb you, but any specific hurdles that, you did really shout out that, you've had to overcome in spite of the kind of amazing support system you had, and, it was a big challenge for you that, you've dealt with and come out of?
Well, I've been in the field 35 years, so there have
Yeah.
been some horrible cases that you've dealt with.
Okay.
There are some cases which make you wonder that whether a person should be called a human being or not. Horribly
Oh, wow.
sexual abuse of a 1-year-old child, the sexual abuse of a mentally retarded girl who had no idea as to what was happening, a father, a mother walking in and finding her naked 4-year-old kid on the bed and daddy also naked and things like that. Not very exciting things. So that kind of thing really makes you wonder what is happening. And unfortunately, it's not always the perpetrator being male. We have females who are also similar. So there are lots of stuff that, over a period of time, you become quite cynical about the state of the world.
Right.
Or the innocence and the general feeling that people are good sometimes goes out of the window, because most people are. I'd still like to believe most people are. I'd still be wanting to feel that generally a person is a good person. But I
Yeah.
mean, the amount of bad that we also see is something that I don't think most other people would.
In a way, you're like a strainer. You're
I'm
just
like a strainer.
cleaning the.
I think there are 3 categories of people who see horrible things. One is a policeman,
Yeah.
a second is a lawyer,
Yeah.
and a third is a psychiatrist.
Right.
The other medical
That's true.
professions, for example, are not going to see the horrible part. I mean, you fracture your leg.
Yeah.
You fractured a leg, but you fractured your brain somehow,
Yeah.
and that's not the best thing in the world.
Would you say a physical damage is nothing compared to,
Absolutely.
like,
I mean, I live on the fact that people are mentally unwell, and every single day I pray to God that my friends and my family would not have this illness.
right?
It's terrible. And unfortunately, given the fact that India is now becoming very developed related to mental illnesses,
Yeah.
we are getting as much of a burden of the mental health pandemic as the
West.
West. So that is unfortunately something that we should not be proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
true.
we're talking of 25% of the population having some kind of mental disorder sometime in their lives. If you're looking at 1.3 billion, that's what? 1/4 of that would be, that's a lot of
Yeah, it's a lot.
mentally affected people.
Would you say it's more in the cities?
No,
Any reason
I think
for
it's
that?
all over. I
It's
think
all
it's
over.
all over. The kind of problems may be a little difficult. Access to mental health is certainly very difficult, very different.
Yeah.
But you're as depressed in the village as you are in the cities. Maybe the manifestation is a little different. Maybe, like I said, the help that is available is certainly very different, but it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you spoke about having a close knit set support system, and you have them to go to, and or you go for your workouts. So, let's talk about these experiences that have brightened up your life, or
Sure.
certain I'm sure there's tons of moments, or some of those that stand out for you?
Okay, so sometimes when you're okay, so some specific ones. I guess there was a time when I had choked on something, and I was almost dying,
Okay.
and somebody was around, and they smacked the life out of me, and that thing came out of my mouth. I was eating too fast, it smoked my mouth, and my I think it was my wife actually. She found me in the kitchen, and I'm tears streaming down, and I was trying to breathe, and I was going because I was choking, and she pushed me down and she hit me on the head, and I've done the same thing to her once when she was choking and a piece of meat fell out. So we've saved each other's lives.
From joking.
Yeah. So she happened to mention to one of my friends, my very close friends, and she was like saying that for God's sake, tell this guy to eat a little slow. He's always running to his work.
Yeah.
What would be the problem if he spent a little more time in actually chewing and masticating properly, and he knows that this has happened before and blah blah. And that guy called me and he fired me left, right, and center. And then I heard he was driving, so I said, "Why are you talking when you're driving?" He said, "I don't care. You listen to me." So that's what friends are like, and for. When you're down, they just lined up there. And so often I've been down for something or the other. And they and their wife, he and his wife just called up saying we're coming down. They're neighbors right now. We are shifting, but they're very, very close neighbors. And they just sit there and they just talk, and it helps.
Okay. Okay, so that was a funny moment. But any mementos, elements like songs that you resonate with, or messages, someone has sent you that's recovered, those breakthrough moments that have, places or events.
Yeah. There have been times when I've been down because of certain things that have happened, either professionally or personally. And then maybe a patient has posted something
Yeah.
which makes you feel that it's really worthwhile. Where the patient would say stuff like, because of you I'm alive, because of you I can look forward to getting up in the morning and look forward to doing things. I was taking so much of medication and it's now to a minimum, and I was almost having a divorce and now we're getting together again. Or my son was extremely abusive towards me, and because of the treatment that you gave him, today he's the kind of kid who everybody would be proud of calling a son, that kind of thing. And it's those things which somehow brighten up your life, especially when you're at a low ebb.
Yeah.
And if it's posted so that the whole world can read it, and everybody is like saying, and the person is saying that,
It just gets more gratifying.
it gets more gratifying because you don't have to share, and we are still a little. I think Indians don't like to share that they're going to a psychiatrist as yet, though lots of people do talk about it now.
Yeah, that's
Much more than what it
Yeah.
was 25, 30 years ago. So when it comes on your own Facebook or it comes on your post page and you've been tagged on it and 3,000 people have seen it because that person is also well known, makes you feel that it's nice, especially since it's unexpected.
Right. No, but can you also anything else other than this that brightens?
Well, there are times when you really think that you kind of losing control over the situation in terms of a patient, because I'm talking of professional now.
Yeah.
And you've done so much, and you've even collaborated with your own friends, and you've discussed. Most of us now have groups of psychiatrists across the nation. Where, of course, it's all anonymous because nobody would know who the patient is. But if you're stuck at a particular thing and you're saying, I've tried this, you get the best brains in the country who say, why don't we also do this? Why don't we also try this? Is this a possibility? So you get a fresh perspective, and it makes a tremendous difference. It's happening in psychiatry. It's happening in every single profession. That's one fantastic thing that social media has done. That today, if I have a problem, I type in something. 3 hours later, I'll have 20 people across India telling me that why don't we try this, which was unheard of.
Okay.
It's just a different perspective on a medical thing. Because let's face it, we all have our pet. Like I might be very interested in children and not so interested in another kind of psychiatric illness. So somebody else might be more interested in that and has done more reading up on that and more experience in that and stuff like that.
Right.
So when we share and when we talk about it, it happens immediately. It's fantastic. This kind of thing we see all the time happening. And when you suddenly realize that, you thought that you'd lost the patient, you thought you weren't doing very well, you're feeling a little guilty because the results are not what you want, and then one fine day the guy comes back saying, I'm great, I'm wonderful, you're a king, and this, it makes you feel very good.
I think it's always works that way. When you
Yeah.
feel it's just going
Going
nowhere,
nowhere, and then it
that's when
suddenly
you get
pops
your
up, yeah.
success. Yeah, I think that's one of those paradox moments. Okay.
Okay.
So you mentioned how it's a taboo here, and people are slowly opening up and even posting about it and thanking you on social media, which is fabulous. But why would you say it is such a taboo, and how do you think we can change this?
Yeah, I certainly think it's changing. No, see, what normally happens is there was this whole thing of if you were mentally ill, then there was something wrong with you, there was something wrong in the way you've been brought up, there'd been something wrong in the way, something wrong your parents did, etc., etc. So it became a kind of a stigma kind of.
Yeah.
Today we know it's changing. Today we know that most of it is genetics. We know there's a lot of structural change. There is some neurotransmitter stuff. There are circuits in the brain which get affected. Blah blah blah. The bottom line is, when I have a stomachache, I'll go to a gastroenterologist. When I have a cardiac failure, I'll go to a cardiologist. Somehow, when I'm depressed or I'm anxious or I have OCD or I'm forgetting things or I'm getting very angry, there is still this reserve about going to a doctor for help. And then you get on to this thing of like, I'm weak. I don't understand where this weakness thing comes from. Are you weak if you have asthma? No, you're not. Are you weak if you have a high blood pressure? No, you're not. But somehow you're weak if you're anxious or depressed. Doesn't make sense at all. So that perspective has to change. Fortunately, it is changing. We've still got a long way to go, but it is certainly much, much better than what it was 25 years ago. Today we do have people coming to us within 6 months of having a problem. Previously it would be 6 years after they had a problem.
Yeah.
And we know that the earlier you start treatment for a particular problem, the more likely it is that you have better resolution and recover faster and more effectively with less residual damage kind of thing.
Correct.
So the bottom line is, it's very likely that before a person comes to me, he'll have gone to a priest and maybe he'll have worn a taviz and he'll drink some holy water and possibly go to a psychologist for counseling and then come to me. And maybe part of this could be shortened.
Shortened, right. So that would be your message.
That would be my message, that we are not horrible people, that we are not going to get you under our control, that we are also doctors.
And not just making money.
Not just making money. And that you are dumb and stupid if you listen to Dr. Google, who's not a doctor.
Okay.
Dr. Google is some 18 years old. A lot of us have been doctors for much longer.
Yeah.
You type in anything in Dr. Google, you'll either die or you'll get cancer. And the experience that most Indian doctors have, just because of their vast population, is incredible, which is why the Westerners look up to us actually for data based on our doctors, on our patients.
Yeah.
Google is nowhere in the picture. So it irritates me when a patient comes to me and says, I know I've got this, do you think I should take this medication? Do you think this side effect will occur? And I say, where do you get it from? And Dr. Google. Ridiculous. Your 15 minutes on social media, because Google is social media, your 15 minutes on that is equivalent to my 35 years of practice. Then next time you have a fracture, put your hand in front of Dr. Google and say, make a plaster, come on.
I'm not for Google. I think I try to live my life as much with learning from people, experience people surrounding, around the right kind of audience and the right kind of people, and then you learn from their experience, which is way more fruitful. So I would totally encourage this as in my capacity. So is there anything you would change looking back at your life, that any regrets or anything you would have done differently or something to affect?
I often believe that hindsight is fantastic. I mean, if we all change what we could have done, what we've done wrong, it's different. So of course we've had bad phases in our life. Maybe we've should have done things a little differently, maybe related to some patient or the other. Maybe I could have done something differently related to certain decisions made, uh, even personally or professionally. But looking back at it, I would like to believe that everything that has happened has molded and made me a better person.
Yeah.
So we look at it like that. So frankly, very few regrets.
Okay. You're at ease with everything that's happened.
Well, not everything that's happened, but I'm at ease.
Okay. Nice. How does your profession affect your personal life, since you just
Sometimes it does. Like I said, it's extremely difficult at times. You know, in one of the places where I was working, some nurses would be working, say, in the cancer department, and I remember some lovely nurses would come and talk to me about the fact that, especially when they were working with cancers in kids, because it's horrible to have cancers in kids, and you're having that kid wither away and die in spite of everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
The nurses would go back home and they'd have their own children,
Yeah.
and they'd say that sometimes they couldn't sleep because they were worrying about what had happened in the hospital. And they'd go back and they'd see their kids and hope that nothing ever happened to the child.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of thing that happens to us. Like I say, we have to learn clinical detachment. Others, we can't survive. We have to learn how to detach, so that it's not that I'm living the problems of the other person who has a problem for which he's come to me.
Right.
But there are some which resonate with you, some which might trigger off something that you yourself have experienced.
You have at the back of your mind.
So your own baggage has to be dealt with as well.
Yeah.
Which is why, at least abroad, every doctor has to undergo his own therapy and stuff like that, which doesn't really happen over here. So sometimes your own biases come in the way. If I, for example, if I've been brought up in a family where my father would beat up my mother, maybe my attitude towards relationships might be a little different.
Correct.
If I've been brought up in a family where the man is treated like king and the woman is treated like a doormat, maybe I'd have problems in dealing with a woman who's assertive.
Correct.
And I'd say there's something wrong with you, and it's not. There's actually something wrong with me, because I can't look at equality the way it should be looked at. Stuff like that. So there's absolutely no getting away from the fact that the cases that you're dealing with are going to affect the way you deal with your own personal life at times.
Okay.
And sometimes it works extremely positively. You see such shit happening in people's lives when they come to you, that you go back home and you're nicer and gentler and much more thankful and much more positive with people at home. And sometimes, especially if you're not having a good time at home, and bad things are happening in your professional life, you come back and you're even more cynical and more negative and more upset. So it becomes a tough thing.
Okay. It's
It works both ways.
yeah, it affects.
It does affect you, of course it affects.
So how do you realign?
Like I told you.
Workouts?
Yeah, workouts, and over a period of time you learn how to cope, and then you look at yourself and you say, come on, you're at it again. It's not the fault of your wife, it's not the fault of your friends, it's not the fault of your kid that you've dealt with a case which has really kind of got
It's
you.
just experience
It's
that
just
gets
experience
you.
that gets you. So you learn how to cope with it.
Yeah.
But I would hope that we never, I used to have a very, very dear doctor friend who was working in one field where most people die.
Mm-hmm.
And she once told me that over a period of, very senior, she said over a period of time, I couldn't cope with people dying. So when I knew a person was dying in spite of all my best efforts, towards the end I wouldn't be with that patient. I'd send my registrars. I know what was happening. I know everything. My assistant honorary would go, my other honoraries would go, but I would not go because I couldn't cope with it.
Right.
We all get affected.
Affected, yes, absolutely. I'm sure it's difficult to balance it
It's
out,
difficult.
but you all are the current superhero in all respects, and I think mental health right now also is a very big
We are
thing
talking
with-
of the new mental health, the new pandemic which is coming out after the corona thing is the mental health pandemic. We are already seeing so much of it. People who are more or less stable because of what has happened over the past year have toppled over the edge. Lots and lots of new cases, especially a lot of abuse. See, you have to remember, if you're at home, say there are two people working, and you're working online, and you've got 2 kids,
Yeah.
and they're studying online, and you're all in a pressure cooker environment at home, day in and day out. Initially, it's amusing.
Yeah.
Over a period of time, it gets irritating. If you have an older person at home who's normally looked after by, say, a helper, and that helper couldn't have reached because of transport issues, then you have to look after that helper. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you know that 2 months down the line, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
We still don't know when
We don't
everything will be
know.
fine. So this
Yes.
uncertainty is what causes more problems. So if you anyway have say an aggressive tendency, or you're extremely impulsive and you're very irritable, then it kind of gets accentuated with this pandemic, and we are seeing a lot of horrible cases also popping up with a lot of abuse, more spousal abuse. You'll be out otherwise 12 hours a day, you
Your
come back,
threshold
the threshold is more. No, and you're not in touch with that person 24 hours.
Right.
You also see a lot of elder abuse happening. You get irritated with your parents, and we are seeing a lot of instances where a man or a woman is actually hitting his parents, which is horrible.
Wow. So what about, did you have any mental health problems? How did you have to cope up with the onset of the COVID-19?
Well, there's obviously anxiety,
Yeah.
and at least initially when you're seeing all those horrible visuals on screen,
Yeah.
and we didn't really know how to cope with it because it's the first time we are dealing with the COVID. So we are also learning, and we are seeing everything, and we are reading things which then start changing. It becomes difficult. And then you have a stage where over a period of time you get very irritated by people who don't use the mask properly and who don't seem to care, and they say, oh, the good Lord will look after us, which is nonsense. And then you have a problem where over a period of time, almost every family has either one or more than one person who's either had the COVID or has died by the COVID or has been very severely incapacitated by the COVID.
Right.
It's very frightening. It's a very frightening thing. Then there was this lockdown ease and things became better. Now again it seems to be another ball game altogether. So there's also COVID fatigue. We get tired of being careful all the time.
Right.
So then you'll end up being careless, which is not the best thing in the world.
That's also, I mean, people are now becoming, they just don't care.
They don't care.
Like, if I have to,
Pop
suffer.
it, I might as well pop it.
Yeah, it's getting to that stage.
Yeah.
Any benchmark moments in your career, things that have happened that have shaped,
Oh yes,
your
I mean
life?
I've been part of some, the Indian Psychiatric Society is the landmark, is the Indian body.
Yeah.
We have a Bombay Psychiatric Society also, and you have state psychiatric societies, but the Indian is the parental body, where they have task forces which are supposed to look after particular parts or aspects of mental health. So you'll have, say, a task force on child psychiatry. So you have a chairperson, a vice chairperson, and a convener, and you go around disseminating scientific information across the country, trying to do things to make awareness in that field, etc. So there are more than 15 to 20 such task forces. Something on geriatrics, something on biological psychiatry, something on OCD, something on now even yoga has got one task force, etc. So I've been part of some national task forces. I've dealt with college. I'm currently with college psychiatry. We've done a lot of work in colleges dealing with mental health. I was part of school psychiatry. I was part of the LGBT thing, the LGBTQ community.
Okay.
Where at that time, 377 was in the process of being repealed, and I was chairperson, and my co-chair and my convener, we did a whole bunch of things across the country, and we managed to bring out a position statement of the Indian Psychiatric Society saying that it's a variation, it's not a disease, it's not a criminal act.
Okay.
So when the thing was repealed, when 377 was repealed, 2 of the 5 learned judges quoted our position statement.
Wow.
So technically, I'd like to think that partly because of our position statement, 10% of Indians got decriminalized.
Wow.
That's a nice thought.
That's amazing. This is very interesting to know. This is great. Wow. I think I'm just even more happy to be having this chance. Great. Any other beautiful?
Well, we've done something with college psychiatry where once, it's just happened this year, in fact, during the COVID time. IIT Mumbai does a lot of work in the mental health field,
Okay.
in lots of fields, and this year they're focusing on mental health. We, on one particular day, with their help and with the help of NAMI India, which is the National Association Against Mental Illness, plus the Bombay Psychiatric Society, where and the Indian Psychiatric Society, where I'm the convener of the college psychiatric task force. We had one day where I think we had some 233 or one, I can't remember the exact number, about 200 odd lectures done by various mental health professionals across India,
Okay.
which is a record, and we are trying to get it in the Limca Book of Records. If it works out, that'll be nice.
That'll, I think, add to the journey of making accepting mental health.
And this came from them. So the youngsters who are in IIT came up to us and said, we'd like to do something. Can we team up with you? You provide the expertise,
Okay.
and we'll get people across India to attend your webinars.
Wow.
Fantastic. I mean, it took a lot of
Yeah.
organization, and
Yeah.
we had to be very clear about what we'd be talking about, and we had to be very clear about what
IIT
would-
is a leading institute.
It's a leading
They
institution,
are-
and they work with NAMI. NAMI is also a fantastic institution. So and the IPS. So we all three teamed up and we got together. And that was lovely.
Amazing. Amazing.
Mm.
That's quite gratifying achievement.
If it happens, I mean, even if it doesn't happen, it was still a huge effort.
Yeah.
If it comes in Limca Book of Records, it's wonderful.
Wonderful. Yeah. You have your name.
But that is not as important as so many things are possible.
No, there is. Yeah.
You know,
You're
there's
creating
the possibility which is important. People
Right.
say, no, it can't happen in India, it can't happen in India. Well, we showed it could.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
And each of those webinars, seminars, whatever you call them, were attended by a huge number of people. So it's not that people are not interested.
No, I think that this is very important if India becomes more accepting as in general as a society
Yeah.
towards mental health. So having it recorded somewhere where it's internationally accepted definitely will help. How do you introspect being a psychiatrist?
Okay. I think it's, for me, one very important aspect of my life, at least till the pandemic and the gym was open, was the exercise.
Yeah.
It was a kind of meditation for me. I know some people do yoga, some people meditate, etc., etc. I used to work out, and that was probably the biggest calmer in my life. I have some friends with whom I discuss things when things are not going very well, whether it's professionally, not so much personally, but whether it's professionally, and that helps me to introspect and see where I have gone wrong and maybe what I could do in my reactions and things like that. So like I said, I think it's my friend circle which really has helped me, and my family of course, which has really helped me cope with feelings at times which may not have been very positive, which helped me to introspect and come to a conclusion as to what to do to make life a little better.
Okay.
I think that's what it would be. These since about a year since the gyms have been shut, it's been a little difficult.
Yeah.
And then you become a little lazy and you get out of. It's so easy to give up a good habit, So.
Yeah, that's true. It's very easy to slip
Yeah,
and
yeah.
get lazy. But anything you want to talk about? People saying, "Oh my God, you take medicines for being."
I'm so glad you brought this up. It's often freaked me out to know that supposing you were diabetic and you were on anti-diabetic medication,
Yeah.
you take it for the rest of your life probably.
Yeah.
And even if you were well maintained, you wouldn't say, can I stop the medication? Now I'm well maintained. You wouldn't even think of that.
Yeah.
If you are having blood pressure issues, the same thing. You probably have to take it for the rest of your life. You wouldn't go around questioning, when can I reduce it? Can I stop it? My pressure's under control, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Ditto for a thyroid problem, ditto for a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah.
But somehow if you're very depressed and I say continue with the medication, the first thing you'll say, how long? When can I stop it? Why should it continue? I'm no longer depressed, etc., etc. I'm going to be dependent on it. I don't know what this dependency thing means. Are you dependent on antihypertensives? Are you dependent on blood pressure, on anti-diabetics? No, you're not. You're taking it to maintain.
Yeah.
Ditto at times, if you have an issue because of which one tablet or two tablets makes a difference to the quality of your life and you're maintained well, take the tablet.
Take the tablet.
Get over this thing of, but people say, and so often I said, they said, people say, but they say that this is going to happen. I say, who's the they? They. Who's the they? Nobody knows who the they is. But that they has become so very important. That they is the person.
Someone
has said something. And who's the someone? Are they doctors? No. But they say that you shouldn't take it. Why? I don't know, but they say it. So let's get over this. They say, let's get over this dependency thing. Today there are well-structured, well-formulated protocols which we lay down, which do make a difference to your quality of life. And it is so dumb and stupid of you if you listen to some incoherent, non-existential they who apparently say that you should stop medication.
And you give a lot of importance to the they.
I give, yeah, and you give a lot of importance to the they. And they don't know who the they is.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
So that will be my take-away message.
I think that is a very sharp point that you've brought, because if people understand this, you just automatically face a lot of things.
Yeah.
Your own issues
Your own
automatically.
Issues. Your own issues.
Automatically.
And let me also say that you are not weak if you seek help. You're not weak if you take medication.
Right.
You haven't not done something or done something because of which you got depressed or have OCD or whatever else.
Yeah.
It is an illness, it is a disease, and we have to deal with it.
Right. So you wouldn't say it's anyone's fault?
Absolutely not.
It's just something that...
Well, now supposing you have a woman who's, say, pregnant, and she's been told not to take drugs, and she's been told not to smoke, and she's been told not to have alcohol, and she does all three, and the child ends up having major developmental issues. Of course it's the lady's problem.
Correct.
But otherwise...
But it's not the child's fault.
It's not the child's fault.
Right. So just being a little more...
I mean, I have so many people coming to me and crying here and saying, I'm so sorry, I feel so weak. And I say, why do you feel weak? Because I'm coming to you. What's the big deal? Do you feel weak if you go to a gastroenterologist? Do you feel weak if you go to a cardiologist? No. Then why do you feel weak if you come to me? No, but I should manage on my own. Why should you manage on your own? That has to move.
I think from the roots, something needs to be...
And it's changing. It's changing tremendously, especially with the younger generation, which is so much more open than maybe their parents were.
Okay.
Still a long way to go, but it's getting there.
Great. We're just hoping for a great society. And
Yes,
with
we are.
people like Dr. Chavda, I'm sure we'll get there soon, putting in all these efforts and doing wonderful things. Mental health is definitely a big factor in developing and shaping our society, the way it operates. So, I've been a little nervous doing this interview because I've been intimidated with the fact that I'm interviewing a psychiatrist, and this is all about understanding people's psyche and getting it out there into an artwork. So, thank you again.
Pleasure. I hope the intimidation has reduced.
Absolutely. You made me feel very comfortable.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Cheers.
great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.